everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out here with us here in Just Be Blessed, where we share people's testimonies and I left the messages and how God is good. And tonight I have a special guest. That's right, it's Keith from Little Light Studios. He's going to be sharing his testimony here in Just Be Blessed. Super excited to hang out with my good friend, my good brother in Christ. We know each other for a few years. We work together in different projects and super excited because I know maybe some of you that you guys know about Little Light Studios. He has a show, every week. He's part of the team, Light, Explosion Darkness, LED, and he's here. That's right, he's here, Keith, and he's gonna be sharing his testimonies and how growing up in a Christian home, their family left and come back, and how he find out, God as a personal savior and ministry, miracles. Yeah, it's gonna be a blessing. And do me a favor, please share this link, because I know maybe your friends, right now they're in their phones, hang out. Why don't much better just to share something, story how God changed a person's life. All right, thanks so much, and let's welcome him. Okay, let's welcome Keith. How you doing, Keith? Thanks so much for being here and Just Be Blessed.
It's good to see you, Alex. It's been like, a couple hours?
I know, right? Yeah. But I'm super excited you're here. I've been doing this Just Be Blessed for, I don't know, maybe over a year, interviewing people. And I interviewed Scotty and Mikey. But I was like, you know what, Keith, it's your turn. Come and share your story, right?
Yeah, there's more people to pick from the office too,
Yes. All right. So here in Just Be Blessed, we kind of relax, hang out. And I mean, people know you a lot because, you go, you do video episodes every week, from LED live. And I'm sure a lot of people, they've been blessed watching those videos. But today is now about maybe some part of Little Light Studios, but now we're gonna be focused about your personal story, your personal life story, and how God changed your life and those miracles, in ministry. So let's start from the beginning. How was growing up? You grew up in a Christian home, brothers and sisters. Share with us.
A Christian home. I have two brothers, both younger, and church was a part of our life from an early age. Parents told me they probably didn't start taking me to church until about 3 or 4. I was a handful, I'm told. So, but later on, I remember going to church from like 4 or 5, and that was a pretty regular thing until about 14. And then my dad had an argument with a pastor over something silly, and both strong personalities, and they weren't going to concede either one. And so my dad took his family and we left. I mean, just like that, like 1 week in church, the next week, nothing.
To a different church, or just like no church whatsoever?
No church.
Wow.
For the next 7 years.
Wow. Interesting.
So, from 14 to 21 I don't know that there's a good time to be out of church, really.
Yeah, right.
But it's rough, as a teenager. And that's really when the media really heavily came into our lives.
Yeah.
I remember doing things that felt against my conscience, like, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I mowed the lawn on Sabbath multiple times. It didn't feel right, but it was like, well, I was supposed to do it, so I did it. So it was a rough time. I remember picking up a Bible, trying to read it, and didn't really understand it, wasn't really interested in it when I was reading it, and it just kind of like, okay, move on to something else. So that was more or less the early years. But I prayed a lot. And when I say a lot, like the kind of prayer where you're walking with God and talking with God and you just
Yeah.
communicate with God throughout your day. And I still do that,
Mm.
I share my thoughts with God. And so, yeah, that was 14 to
20.
21 in a nutshell. Of
Yeah.
course,
So in those 7 years, I mean, what about at home? I mean, that your dad, it was like, hey, you know what? Maybe I left the church or left Christianity, or just maybe at home it was like, okay,
no,
let's.
I wouldn't say I don't know if that was ever going to be permanent. I kind of doubt
Mm,
it.
mhm,
But it's not like there was zero talk of the Bible. It's not like there was zero
mm,
prayer or anything like that. I mean, we continue to pray before our meals, and
mm.
my mom would read us Bible story books, at night. I
Yeah.
remember that very vividly.
Mm,
So we had a lot of the information,
mhm,
but I guess in that time, Jesus wasn't as real to me. Like,
mm,
I understood the Bible stories. I knew what they were about. I could tell you a lot of them by
mhm.
memory.
Yeah.
But, the interaction of Jesus coming into your heart, forgiving you of your sins, making that personal, I was probably
Mm,
somewhat detached from all that.
yeah.
Uh, and I'm not saying that's the fault of my parents. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
It's just at some point in a person's life that becomes real.
Yeah.
And, that realistic part didn't come until later for me.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. So going to college, high school years. I mean, God, it was like you were saying. I mean, you were talking to God, praying to God, and stuff like
You
that.
know,
It was a
yeah.
commitment. You know.
In junior high and high school, I would say I probably didn't have the best group of friends.
Mm,
It's not like I went out partying and drinking and all that kind of stuff, but the
mm,
people I just generally hang with in junior high and high school weren't a good influence on me.
mm,
And so it made my mind really run in channels that it never should have. And the one thing I regret is very close to graduation, there was a girl in our class. She wound up being our valedictorian, and she was a Christian. I knew she was a Christian. Most people knew she was a Christian,
mm,
pretty strong one. And I didn't really have any kind of, I mean, we knew each other from school, but I never really talked to her much
yeah.
until just a few days before graduation. And it was that at that point I realized this is somebody I should have made my friend early on,
Mm,
because it would have helped my junior high and high school experience. Because I went to the same school, junior high through high school.
okay.
It's the same group in my class, like 30 people.
Wow. Same.
That yeah, small, right?
Yeah.
That's your group. And I really wish I would have gotten to know her better much earlier. I think it would have helped a lot.
Mm,
But yeah, graduated, did okay in school. But then I didn't think I was going to college. In
mm,
fact, I just figured I'd go get a job and start working and whatever.
yeah.
And the reason I thought that is because my family didn't have any money. I don't have any money, so how am I going to get to school? That's expensive.
Yeah.
And um, it was about this point that I would say God worked one of the first miracles for me.
Mm,
My parents, when I told them I wasn't going to college, they told me, "Yes, you are. You're going to go to school." And I was like, "Well, I don't have any money. I don't know how I'm supposed to pay for that." And they said, "Well, you're going to figure it out." So, with that, I knew I had to improve my standardized testing scores. I lived in the Midwest, so the
mm,
standard test you take is the ACT. For East and West Coast, it's largely SAT. So it's basically the equivalent.
okay.
It's, the SAT is like a 1,200 or 1,500 point test. ACT is only like a 36-point test. Okay.
Wow. Wow.
So,
I'm still learning because I came from Mexico, so I went to college in Mexico. So now my daughters, they're learning about this thing. They I need to study for this test and
yeah.
stuff like that. So
Yeah. So, I had to take this. I took the test in high school. I mean, that's pretty standard practice. If you're going to college, you're supposed to take the test. And I did it, even though I don't know what I was thinking. I just did it, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so took the test. I really didn't do that great. It was okay. It wasn't what everybody expected from me.
Mm-hmm.
It was just kind of mediocre.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of another thing in the back of my mind. It's like, well, I didn't do that good, so I'm not really cut out for college, I guess.
Maybe in your mind you were already set, like, you know what, I'm not gonna go to college. So
I don't know.
what an effort, right?
I don't know. I don't know what it was, but
Mm.
anyway, took the test, didn't do that great. And then, when my parents told me I have to go, I knew I had to raise my score if it was going to be any kind of an impact for me. So I took the next year off of high school and I did some studying. Not like a lot, but I did some. And I had to retake it before applying for college. And so I applied for college and did the test and got my score back. I sent everything in. I went on orientation day. No idea what I'm doing. I just show up. There's thousands of kids there. They're getting ready to go to college. I don't know what classes I'm going to take. I don't know anything. I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. I know nothing. And, everybody's in the beginning all in the same place, and then they start to segregate you off. And I got segregated off into a smaller group. And while I was there, they were like, okay, you need to start picking out your classes and all this kind of stuff. I'm clueless. I have no idea what I'm doing. Like,
it's kind of scary, right? I mean, like,
yeah,
everybody's
like,
together. You feel like, okay, and then they call you names.
yeah.
What is
So I was probably dragging my feet. I probably looked confused because I was.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually somebody like asked me a question I thought was weird. They're like, do you know why you're here? I'm like, well, I'm at college and you're supposed to, but they're like, no, do you know why you're in this room? I was like, no, I don't know why I'm in this room. And they said, well, this is the honors group. You scored high enough on your standardized testing that you're in the top 10% of the kids here at this college. And I was like, wow. And I was kind of like, it's not like I was like way, way up. I was just kind of like, I was at the bottom of the top, I barely got in.
Yeah.
But what that did is it started God working in my life, because after I walked out of that room, I knew a couple of things. I knew, one, I had a schedule. And secondly, I had a full ride scholarship to start college. That's what they started me on. And so that question of like, where's the money going to come from? No big deal. Like, and they showed me, like I could apply for financial aid as well. So when I started college, I was almost making money. I had money above what I needed for my classes. And so that was one way I was like, wow, God, you really worked in my life. I'm not going to church. I don't know anything, but God was opening a door for me that I thought was pretty amazing. So, I'm like 19 years old. Yeah. And that's how it started. Unfortunately, I didn't keep my scholarship. I wasn't always the greatest student. You could say I probably didn't really apply myself like I should have. And so I'll let your imagination determine how that happened. But I'm not proud of that. I could have done much better. But, just such as life, it didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
So 21, a couple of years later, I walk into the honors lounge. It was kind of my hangout spot at school, in between classes, so I didn't have to drive back and forth to home. And wasn't, again, I was kind of a poor student, even like I'm on full ride scholarship and I'm not taking it as seriously as I should have. Wow. I didn't really study in between classes. And, I would go into the honors lounge and waste my time. I would play Minesweeper. I got really good at it. Or I'd do crossword puzzles. It was just kind of my way to unwind and blow off steam. But one day I walk in there and there's this girl and she's reading her Bible. I was like, this is really kind of strange, because
that's the same girl from high school? No.
No. Okay. Different girl.
Okay.
But all the girls I had encountered at college, and this is a secular, university, They weren't doing that. I never seen anybody reading their Bible. In fact, all the girls I knew talked about partying and drinking and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, this is kind of different.
Mm.
And I asked her, what she was reading about. And she was reading in Romans chapter 8, I think, at the time.
Mm.
And she was trying to reconcile God's love with eternal torment.
Wow.
And so
College, thinking that kind of stuff, man. That's
I
pretty
know.
neat, man.
So I was like, okay. In my mind, I felt like I had an answer. I didn't really have the best answer, but I felt like, well, I know that's not right. How to
Mm.
explain it? I could have made an attempt, but
Mm.
I think what I did when I got home is I cracked the Bible open and just kind of like
Kind of like,
looked,
you know,
yeah, and tried to make sense of it all. And
and to
yeah,
heaven.
I'm sure it
Mm.
wasn't that effective, but
Mm.
I remember, things from growing up, and I didn't have quite that picture of God.
Mm.
So anyway, we started talking, and the reason she was there is because the student who was in there, the secretary student, she was dating this girl's brother. And so she wanted to get to know this other girl who might be her sister-in-law someday.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that's why she would come. And so we started talking often. It was about this time, there was another guy that I met in one of my classes, and it was pre-calculus. And he was talking with some guy before class, and the way he spoke, I just knew that he was an Adventist.
Mm.
And that's what I grew up with. But I hadn't been around this for a long time. But I knew he was. I could just tell by the way he spoke. And so I asked him after class, point blank. I was like, "You're a Seventh-day Adventist, aren't you?" And he's big smiling. He's like, "Yeah, how did you know?" It's like,
Mm.
I can just tell by the way you talk, which is an amazing testimony, right?
Mm.
To
That's right.
somebody could identify you that way by the way you speak.
Mm.
But I also met somebody else, and it's probably a little bit before that. I I was pre-med starting out, and I thought I had to do biology, and I discovered I didn't really like biology.
Mm.
And I was discussing it with some guy I met. He was from the Ukraine. His name is Yevgeny, thick accent, and he was a chemistry major. And I was telling him, I was like, well, I'm pre-med, but yeah, I'm not really into the biology thing. And he's like, well, you don't have to do biology. He's like, you could do chemistry and still be pre-med. And I was like,
Mm.
really? So that's what I landed on for my major, was chemistry and biochemistry.
Mm.
And it's thanks to Yevgeny. And Yevgeny also started inviting me to campus meetings that were Christian. And, the hook to this was there's free pizza.
Okay.
It's Friday afternoon, all college
Pop.
students hungry. Yeah, probably pop.
Yeah.
And then there's a devotional thought at the end. And I'm like, I mean, I kind of miss church anyway. I'll go and listen and get some free pizza. This sounds good.
That's right.
So he started, really me kind of down that road in college, thinking more, being more spiritually minded and thinking about those things again and reintroducing me to the things that I really missed. So that's kind of the nutshell of how the road to Christianity really started. Is there started becoming people in my life that were influential and, leading me down that path. So I still am kind of loosely in contact with Yevgeny today. He sends me a Christmas card every year.
Right.
He's a chemical engineer for BP, and he lives in Texas. And so I've kind of watched his family grow up. He credits me for his marriage.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
The girl that he married, I guess they got introduced through me or something. So it's kind of an interesting story. But
that's pretty cool.
Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the nutshell of the beginnings of college. And really what that led to was me getting to know Rachel better, and to the point where, we dated for 3.5 years and got married.
Mm.
And that presented a challenge because it was bumpy. It was
Mm.
bumpy along the way.
Mm.
In that 3.5 years, I early on, I really wrestled with this because I was like, well, here's a girl. I'm starting to come back into a relationship with God. She challenged me with, what do you believe? Why do you believe it? Most people don't know.
Mm.
And I was like, that's probably some questions I should answer for myself, you know? So, at the time I didn't have those answers, and I started seeking them out. What do I believe? Why do I believe it? And I started studying my Bible. I started getting Bible studies and studying them from Amazing Facts, and really digging into, what do I believe?
Mm.
It was about that same time that my family started going back to church. And I had a pastor who was very available, would answer my questions just about any time, and really encouraged me. And as he saw me growing, he put me to work, and put me as the, youth leader for Sabbath school. And he eventually got me on the church board at a young age, and, as the youth representative, and wanted me to see how things work and interact and all that. And so, yeah, he was very influential in my discovering, who I am in Christ, and discovering the Bible for myself. But early on in this experience with Rachel, I knew that this could be a perfect distraction. That's how I was thinking. I was like, well, here I am coming back to God. What if this isn't the right girl? What if she's just a distraction? What should I do? And I gave God permission to remove her out of my life, even though I liked her. And
interesting. I mean, when you met some girl, it's like, man, I want to keep this girl. You know what I'm saying? Like,
she was a nice girl. I mean,
yeah.
There's nobody else at church. I mean, nobody else reading their Bible. And the church I went to was in a small town, and you could say the pond wasn't very full of fish. So,
yeah.
I didn't think, I guess in my mind, I wasn't really ever going to get married, but, I was starting to entertain the idea. And, here was a girl who was a possibility. But so I prayed, God, I need you to remove her out of my life if this is not the thing to do. And it was after that prayer, like right after that prayer, that God spoke to me very directly and distinctly. He said, she will become a Seventh-day Adventist. That was important to me because we would both be on the same page. It had nothing to do with her love for Christ. I already knew that was solid. It had nothing to do with her personality or her character qualities or anything like that. But that was my concern is, there are two things that can be a problem for people in a marriage. The number one is money, and number two is religion. So, you can set yourself up for a recipe for failure later on if there's a bunch of conflict in that department.
So true.
But I started to question, like, where did that come from? What is this? She will become a Seventh-day Adventist. Like, how do I know that's not just my head talking to me and all those things? So I just kept it in my mind and in my heart. And I said, I'm not going to tell anybody. So we were dating, I pursued the relationship, and we got to a point where we were in the habit of calling each other every night and seeing each other on a regular basis. We took a class together, this kind of thing. There was one night we didn't call each other. We had an argument earlier in the day. I don't even remember what it was about, but it was a heated argument, and I was going to dig my heels in and say, I'm not going to call her. I was upset. So that night, I remember it was close to 11 o'clock, and I'm like, well, by that point, she would have, we would have called each other for sure. And I was thinking, I guess it's over.
Mm.
But those words that God spoke to me started to play back in my head. And I thought, well, if that's true, then I need some confirmation.
Wow.
And I said, Lord, if that's true, what you said, and I'm not just making that up in my head,
Mm.
have her call the next 5 minutes.
Wow.
She did. So I was like, wow, okay,
I
that's
mean,
kind
how
of
are you gonna answer to God, right? Like, oh my goodness, you did that. I
yeah.
mean,
How do you,
handle it.
I can't explain that.
Mm.
So I just said, okay, I'm not going to doubt you on this point again.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just going to continue to stay the course.
Yeah.
We got to the point where it was rough. My dad wasn't particularly pleased that she wasn't an Adventist.
Mm.
Her family probably wasn't particularly pleased, but I think they were a bit more
Different
um,
faith.
willing than my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so at one point, the pressure got intense enough that I just decided to break it off.
Mm. Oh.
And I remember that day she drove me home, got out of I broke it off in the car, got out, went to my room. It was like, I don't know what else to do.
Wow.
So
That was a tough moment, man. I mean,
she wasn't happy. I think she yelled at me. And as I was going into the house, and then
Rachel has
yeah,
a strong attitude.
she does. Again, I'm thinking it's over,
Yeah. Yeah.
but she didn't leave.
Mm.
She got out of her car. She went to the house and sat on the porch, and she was crying. And my parents from inside could hear her, and they went out and they brought her in and they asked her what was wrong, and she told them. And they worked it out, you could say. My dad was like, well, I can't exactly, I know there's a lot of pressure and that's what I want, but he's like, but I can't really say anything because, his mom was a Baptist when I married her.
Mm.
So um, at that point, things got a lot better. It wasn't long after that we were engaged and we got married. We had an outdoor wedding, non-denominational pastor, and that way we could kind of appease both sides of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And we got along great. We went to church twice a week, once on Sunday, once on
Mm-hmm.
Saturday, and um, things were going well. And there was this one night, I had a new pastor by this point. We went over to his house,
Mm.
and he was having a get together, like I don't know, like a Saturday night thing, and there were younger people from our church there, and we went, and one guy is just sharing his testimony. I mean, he went from Catholic to converted, Seventh-day Adventist on his couch,
Mm.
watching a satellite, video, and then
Mm.
ordered the whole presentation set, and like
Mm.
never set for church, but totally was into the message. So he's telling about his experience and all these, doctrinal points he's
Mm-hmm.
discussing. My wife's listening. I think she's nervous or uncomfortable. So I make an excuse to leave. Later, I find out she really didn't want to leave. She was interested.
Oh.
But when we got home and pulled under the carport at our apartment, she said some words I don't know that I'll ever forget. She said, I want to study Daniel and Revelation with you.
Powerful
We had
book.
been married about 4 months or so.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, that really didn't take long, God.
Mm-hmm.
And, over the course of the next year or so, she studied, and she joined the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Mm-hmm.
She joined by profession of faith.
Okay.
She wasn't rebaptized or anything. She believed that, she was baptized. She loved Jesus, and we're
Mm-hmm.
good to go. So,
Yeah.
and I remember that day. It was the same day we had our firstborn son dedicated. And after she joined the church, I prayed and I asked God, it's like, I thought you said she was going to become a Seventh-day Adventist, but she wasn't baptized. And God spoke to me and he said, I never said she was going to be baptized. But she did become a Seventh-day Adventist, right? So it's like, so I was like, oh, okay. What do you say? I mean, God answering. So I think about it. I had one idea in my mind, and God had a different version of history. So, yeah, that's how that worked out. And then, our little family grew.
Yeah, for kids, beautiful kids. And I just want to share something what I about Rachel, because you talk about, like, she was like, hey, I really want to study with you Daniel Revelation, and or like you mentioned, you saw her in this place in college, she was studying her Bible, right? And a few times there I've been going to your church and by me, I saw her many times. The pastor's preaching and she has her notebook and she's writing down notes and she's on it. I mean, seriously, she's on it. Don't think she's just like, oh yeah, kind of like, yeah, she's on it. And
I would probably be doing that too, but right now we're meeting in a tent, and the outside stuff, all the extra stuff you have to wind up bringing with you, I've kind of given up until we wind up in a building.
yeah. But yeah, she was on it, and that's I was like, whoa, man, she's not messing around. Like,
no, she is serious.
It's serious, yeah. And conversation, yeah, it's pretty good. Okay, so Mary, 4 beautiful kids, and you're like, okay, Lord, I'm ready. I want to work for you, and let's do it. And everything was happy.
So the way that started was early in our marriage. I told her that God had laid on my heart 3 things. I needed to change what I was watching. Well, first I needed to change what I was eating. Second, I needed to change what I was watching. And third, I needed to be willing to move anywhere. And those 3 things were laid on my heart as the conditions for ministry, which I felt called to do. But, I actually had an offer early on in our marriage. I knew a pastor, and he was like, hey, I can get you into the Southern Union as a pastor. You start out with a couple of churches and this kind of thing. I was like, well, I didn't go to theology school. And he's like, that's okay. They'll get you a master's and, you'll be fine. And I said, no. It scared me. I was like, I don't know that I want to do that. I don't know that I'm ready for that. I don't know that I'm like pastor material. So we just, our little family grew. We got a house out in the country, very quiet. And while we were there, I came across some interesting videos. It was on Facebook. A friend of mine, his nephew, had posted them, and they were these videos about Battlefield Hollywood. And I started watching them, and I was intrigued because it wasn't all the, I guess what you would call the extra information, right? It wasn't all the, this person was a Freemason or this or that. It was, to me, it was my answer. It was a biblical answer for why should I not just watch whatever I want to watch? Right? So, because there were things that, it's like, I'm a Christian, I'm watching these things, I'm going to church, and it's like, should I really be watching that? Is that really the best for me? Is that really God want that in my life?
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like I had a strong answer to stop. And so, just watch whatever. I mean, uh, but when I watched these videos, and it was Scott, who we work with today, um, it made a lot of sense, at least from the biblical perspective. It was, and here's the nutshell idea. Jesus is coming soon. And if Jesus is coming soon, our minds should be prepared for Jesus to come. They should be cleansed, right?
Amen.
They should be not full of all these worldly things. The Bible tells us in it's 1 John chapter 2 that if any man loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. And in that chapter, in that passage,
That's
it's
a strong verse right there.
verses 15 through 17. It's kind of really laying out, what's of the world and what's of God. And I'm not saying that this is a condition to be saved or lost, but what I came away believing is that God wants me to have a clear mind, and God really has better things for me to do with my time instead of me just picking. And so it's removing myself out of the way and saying, okay, God, you pick what it is that I do with my time, and you give me guidelines on what I should fill my head with instead of me doing it. Because as sinful human beings, what are we going to do? We're going to fulfill our carnal desires and lusts every time. This is what we do, right? We are selfish by nature. We will fuel self. And so that's really what I heard. It wasn't about all the extra stuff that people may hear, or this satanic symbol or this or that. It was really, Jesus is coming soon. Be ready to meet him. Cleanse your mind and turn your time over to God.
Yeah.
So I walked away from that saying that seems like something I could identify with. Here's a ministry that's technological, which I already had a draw to, and it was a ministry, and I thought, man, this could be a good fit for me. So I started communicating with them, and I started praying about it. And I had some communication with the guys. I tried to help with website and email and stuff like that. And, one day, it was probably 18 months after my initial contact with them, I just decided I was going to call the office. And so I called the office. I got Chris, I think at the time, who doesn't work with the ministry anymore. And he just gave me Scott's cell phone number. So I called Scotty. He was at home. And I just kind of poured my heart out. It's like, I feel like God is calling me to ministry. I feel like I'm supposed to help you. I have no idea what that means. And, told him, I don't know, I talked to him for a half an hour or something solid, just kind of pouring my heart out. At the end, I'm telling him, does this sound crazy? He said, no, it doesn't sound crazy. He's like, well, what do you do? I was like, well, I work at a laboratory for agricultural chemistry. He's like, oh. And he asked me,
Hollywood. These guys came from the lab.
Do you know Photoshop, or do you know how to edit video? And I'm like, nope. So I don't think he knew what to do with me, but he took it seriously. He prayed about it, and I was praying about it. And I tried to help them as much as I could from a distance, just kind of centralizing communications and helping with their website and things like that. And I went on a camping trip with them in 2013 in July. We had a real serious talk, and I prayed, and I said, Lord, if you want me to work with this ministry, you need to sell my house.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't have time to advertise. I don't have the time to talk to a realtor. I was busy. I was involved in my church. I had a job. I lived half an hour one way, so I'm driving an hour every day for work. And I was like, I've got my family. I don't want to. I like, where am I going to find the time?
Yeah.
So 2 weeks after I prayed that prayer, I got a phone call, somebody says on the other line, "I hear you're trying to sell your house."
Wow.
That sent chills up and down my spine
Yeah, no kidding.
because I hadn't advertised. The only thing I did, I had to think about it. The only thing I ever did was about 6 months prior to that prayer.
Mm.
I talked to a lady at church, a lady I don't normally talk to much about anything. And she asked me how things were going. And, I was telling her, and I said, I feel like God's laying on my heart that I should be ready to sell my house.
Mm.
Why I told her that, I have no idea.
Wow. Interesting.
But fast forward 6 months and 2 weeks, it's her daughter is the one that calls me.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like, here God was planting that seed. I didn't know it at the time, but God was planting that seed. And then I pray a prayer and God answers. So everything actually happened very quickly. The house, she came by, she looked,
Yeah.
we worked out the offer, paperwork, everything went. I mean, it was all done in like 3 months.
Wow, that's
Done,
quick.
like complete. So we have to move out, go to my mother-in-law's, and at that point I'm like, okay, I got to find a place in California, right? Good luck.
I know.
It's expensive out there. At least the part I would say is really expensive is housing.
Yeah.
So I move in with my mother-in-law, and during this time after we decided to sell the house, my wife tells me we're pregnant. That's with our fourth child.
Mm.
So we decide, okay, we're going to stay, not going to try to rush move to California. We'll just stay and go through this, here while I have insurance and all that kind of stuff and have the child. Kept looking, couldn't find a place in California. It was tough. Kept working with, agencies to rent something. Finally, like the next year, it was September, I found a place, and I had to pay all of September for rent and all of October, and I think a deposit. And we landed in that house October 31st. So yeah, I mean, it was tough to secure a place. And so we did this whirlwind move across the country, and Scott and Tom came out and helped us, and, at the motorhome, and I bought a trailer and we moved. And, that's how I got into ministry. It was like kind of this miraculous whirlwind experience. And, I didn't know what I was going to do. To me, I was just there to help, whatever that meant. They're the professionals, they're the video editors, they're the camera guys. I don't know any of that stuff. I mean, I can learn, but I was just there to help. So I started doing things like shipping, and of course I was helping with the website, and answer the phone and answer people's emails, and whatever I could to alleviate them so that they had more time to do what I was deeming, I guess, the important stuff.
Yeah.
But I did start speaking before I arrived. They tossed one my way. I had done a couple in my area, not much attendance, not much success, but there was one in Chicago. There was like 300 people there. And it was translated into Spanish simultaneously. I went there. I had a great experience. It's very vivid in my mind. Everything went really well. And I was kind of used to speaking from church. So at this point, it was like just learning material. And then I started helping with the speaking load here and there and everywhere. And that was one thing. I look back, and the Bible says that God will give you the desires of your heart, right? Amen. And I don't think that those are carnal desires. I think that those are things that you would like that are perfectly normal, moral things, but you may not ever get to do under normal circumstances. One of the things I've always wanted to do is travel and see the world. Different places of the world. I like meeting new cultures and interacting with them. I like seeing new sites and seeing different parts of the world and how they work. And I've been able to travel since doing this job
Mm-hmm.
to all different parts of the world. I mean, I've been to Australia, I've been to Portugal, I've been to Aruba, I've been to Bermuda, I've been to Canada, and all over the US. And that to me is exciting. And it was an answer, I think,
Mm.
to the desire of my heart that God's seen there. Because if I'd have been working some normal lab chemistry job, I'd have probably never traveled,
Yeah.
probably would have never gone and seen those places or met those people.
Mm.
But God, he's amazing. And he
Mm.
said,
Mm.
I know this is something you would like to do. So I'm adding that to the situation. So pretty amazing in
Mm-hmm.
that regard. And I love it. Actually, traveling and speaking is probably one of the most favorite things about this job. I like that. I'm not going to say I would do it every weekend,
Yeah.
but I like
Once
to
a
do it on
month.
yeah, once a month is about right.
Once a month is pretty good.
And I would love to
Mm-hmm.
go to Europe more, or different countries. I've been to India a long time ago,
Mm.
not for Little Light, but I like meeting the people and seeing
Yeah.
how they live. I think you get a better appreciation
Mm-hmm.
for the world around you, and the world that you're currently in. Like in the United States, we don't often have a um, a good picture of what goes on in other places.
Mm.
And there are people in this world that live very, very poorly.
Mm-hmm.
They have poor living conditions, poor economies. They don't probably travel more than 10 miles from the place they were born.
Mm.
Um, it really gives you an appreciation for what you have access to in
Yeah.
this country.
Agree. Agree. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty nice. And what an awesome thing, like you were saying, that God give you the desires of your heart. That one thing that you're really passionate about, or like you really like,
Mm-hmm.
is meeting people, or travel and stuff like that. And God give you the desires of your heart, and go different places, and not just to meet them and culturally, but also, to share hope,
Mm-hmm.
sharing this powerful material, Battlefield Hollywood. And right now I'm gonna do a little pause because I really want to share if people that they don't know anything about Little Light Studios, but let me tell you, they're an awesome ministry. Please tell us. I'm gonna be showing the YouTube channel, and what we can find in YouTube.
All right, so on our
Yeah.
YouTube channel, what you're going to find is a lot of videos, and that's what we do. We make videos about all kinds of topics. We try to play off of popular or trending topics, or things
Mm.
that people may have an interest in. But we're really using that to teach biblical truths. And we believe that our culture is starved for a lack of correct biblical information. And so that's
Mm.
why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Uh, so, yeah,
Yeah.
media has a really strong impact on people,
Mm.
and I know it did on me. It, you could say it really inspires you sometimes.
Mm.
Remember, like The Matrix. I was in the middle of my martial arts training. The
Mm.
Matrix came out, and it was kung fu, and that's what I was training in. And man,
Wow.
you watch that and you just get so pumped and so excited and inspired, and
Sure.
I remember watching that and seeing some biblical things, and it's like, wow, that's kind of like Jesus, but you don't think too much about it.
Yeah.
And there's scientific reasons for that, but media can plant seeds for people. It can really um, drive culture in a particular direction. And that can be good or bad, you
Mm.
know. And so it's a powerful tool, and it needs to be used for positive things. And so we are really trying to communicate with people and say, you want to be careful what you put into your mind,
Yeah.
because it influences you. It can shape the way that you think or react to certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And really, you want your primary influence in your life to be the Bible, and that to be your guide on life, and not letting your life be swayed by what's in the media one way, or the other. Now, having said that, I work for a media company. We do want you to pay attention to our media. That's because we believe we're putting positive biblical information out there.
Yeah.
But just as a rule, like your popular style media, and even the news, the news we see is more polarized than ever. It's kind of very one-sided. If you're likely an evangelical Christian, you're probably watching Fox News. If you're on the more liberal side, you're probably watching CNN. That's just the way that divide has gone, and they cater to their demographic.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So that's pretty neat. I mean, how the Lord, opened the door for you and your family, be working full time and going different places and stuff like that. Please share with us your final thoughts. Maybe somebody right now is watching and wants to be, part of a ministry, and maybe they're like, I want to spend more time with the Lord, or maybe I have gifts and now I want to share Jesus, and stuff like that. What is the advice that you can give them, as be involved in ministry or just in their personal life?
Yeah, I think let's start with the personal life. Really, you have to start with the Bible and let that be your inspiration. Let it be your guide. Let it be the tool through which God communicates with you. That's why we have it today. And so if you really want to grow spiritually, you need to be reading your Bible. There's just no substitute for that. Another thing that's going to help a lot is prayer. And, most Americans probably don't pray more than 7 minutes a day, I think is the statistic. So, we're supposed to be in prayer a lot more. I'll give you an example. Like Martin Luther, he said something like, I have a lot to do today, therefore I have to spend like a couple hours in prayer. Yeah. We think about that totally opposite. Like, I have a lot to do today. I can't take much time to pray. But he realized that if he spent time in prayer, the rest of his day was going to go much better. And so there's really no substitute for that time in prayer. And we're probably all guilty of, not spending enough time here and there.
Yeah.
So, anytime throughout the day, try to be communicating with God all throughout the day and be in that state of prayer. As the Bible says, that's the pray without ceasing idea. So on a personal level, that needs to be first and foremost. Allow God to work in your life. And that needs to happen whether you go into a ministry or not. It just needs to be part of your growth experience. And if you're not growing as a Christian, you're probably really experiencing spiritual death. That's just the way that it works. So for ministry, I guess my advice would be, God probably puts a desire in your heart, and you need to learn to recognize that. People have spiritual gifts that God will use. There's kind of I kind of grapple with this a little bit. Really, we oftentimes think of ministry as a working in ministry, that's a job. Really, in reality, what it is when we're at our jobs, ministry is first, our work is second. God put every person on this earth who's a born-again Christian to be a missionary. That's your primary focus. That's your primary goal. That's your primary job, if you will, is to be a missionary. So I'm not discouraging people from going into ministry, but a lot of times people in ministry can't reach the people that you're around. You can reach them. They're in your sphere of influence. And so you need to start there. If you're not a minister to those around you, I think it would be hard to minister to other people. So that's a good place to start. Now, if you feel a very specific call to ministry, then I would say two things. One, you need to recognize what are your spiritual gifts? What is God calling you into? And secondly, you need to be willing to humble yourself and do whatever God wants you to do. And I think I learned that from my own experience. You know, I work with Little Light now, and it's more of, I probably work in a more of an administrative type of role. I didn't start out doing that. I started out doing the shipping, trying to make the website work and answer the phones and
Mm-hmm.
people's questions by email and that kind of thing. I still do those things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that those are unimportant things. They're important things.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to be done.
Yeah.
And that is as much ministry as going out and talking to people,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's
Yeah.
not to elevate one or minimize the other, but
Mm-hmm.
you need to be willing to do whatever. When Christ came to this earth, he was demonstrating what a life of ministry looks like. And at the Last Supper, he did what nobody else wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
He washed everybody's feet and served them. That's what a minister needs to be willing to do, is to serve others. So I would say, um, I will give you kind of maybe my own personal assessment. We have people who will contact us from time to time, and kind of right out of the gate, they're like, I need to work with you guys. And it's kind of geared toward, they want to be on our show and be in front of a YouTube audience. That's not the total of the work. And I think some people get it in the idea, like the way they can minister to people is be on a YouTube program. You automatically have an audience of 100,000 people, and that's how you need to minister. To me, it's almost like a huge red flag.
Mm. Yeah.
If you're going to help a ministry, you need to come
Mm.
to that ministry and say, how can I help you?
Okay. That's right.
What do you need help with?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm not saying there's not going to be a point in time where that ministry would use you in that capacity,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think it's a good practice to go to a ministry and say, hire me to be on your show.
I
There's
want
so many,
this.
yeah, it happens behind the scenes that
Mm-hmm.
people do that they don't see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, just keep in mind, there are people who work at ministries. Some of them are large ministries, and you know what they do? They sweep the floors and mop them.
Mm-hmm.
They work for ministry,
Yeah.
and they're doing a work. It's a work that probably a lot of people don't want to do, but they are serving, and they are they are where God has put them for that time. God may put you sweeping floors and mopping,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine, because wherever God has you, if that's where he wants you, that's the best place you can be,
Yeah. Praise the Lord, right?
right? So, I guess those are my thoughts on working in ministry. And
Amen. Thank you for sharing. Uh,
yeah,
Before we finish this interview, share with us your favorite Bible verse. That Bible verse that was there next to you.
okay.
Yeah, you can read
So
it. You don't have to memorize it.
I am going to read it just because I don't want to butcher it. I can probably say it from memory, but
Yeah.
I'm going to read it. So what I like is Galatians 2:20, and to me, this is just an expanded form of the gospel.
Mm.
Paul says in his letter to the Galatians, he says, "I have been crucified with
Mm.
Christ." This is what's supposed to be every one of our experience.
Mm.
He says, "It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me."
Amen.
It's really the only way we're going to escape the um, the things that beset us in this life. That's the only way we're going to escape, the snares of Satan, who just want to drag us down. He goes on to say, "And the life which I now live in the flesh," he's showing us we still live in this world. There's a reality check there. He says, "I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me."
Mm.
So to me, that's a beautiful verse. It's a promise, and it really shows God's love for us and what he wants to do in our lives. And I've prayed that verse many times as a prayer. I probably need to pray it more. I probably need to pray it daily. I find
Mm.
strength in the verse,
Yeah.
because we need to be crucified with Christ.
Yeah. Amen.
Paul said of himself, "I die daily." that's that crucifixion experience where the
Mm.
old flesh, the old man, is being put away, and with that is raised up a new man.
Amen. Amen. All right. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And like I said, a lot of people, watch, LED every week, and we see, Keith in the corner, kind of quiet guy, but it's like every time you open your mouth, it's something wisely you share. So it's like we want to know your story. Thanks so much for
Well,
being here, and just be blessed to share your story. And
yeah, thanks for having me. And if there's any wisdom that comes out of my mouth, it can only be God, because that's where wisdom comes from,
right. That's
So,
right.
praise God.
Amen. Amen. Okay, don't hang up. Okay, I'm gonna be finished this video. Okay.
Okay.
I hope you enjoyed Keith from Little Light Studios here, and just be blessed sharing his testimony. And let me tell you, please, if you don't know anything about Little Light Studios, seriously, you're missing out, because I'm gonna be sharing with you guys right now on the website, and go check them out. Little Light Studios. They do a lot of things of media and exposing darkness through the light of Christ. They have a YouTube channel, documentaries and videos, testimonies, and please go check them out. And also, thanks so much for the 4,000 subscribers here in Just Be Blessed. Please share those videos and watch it, so other people they can be blessed, and are here in Just Be Blessed in our YouTube channel. Thanks so much for your support. My name is Alex Castillejos here in Just Be Blessed, where we share people's testimonies and I've left the messages and how God is good. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week with another video. Thank you. Bye-bye.